Some new cars depreciate harder than burning your money at a weekend partying on Rodeo Drive, or it's like watching the value of your vehicle diminish like an audience 2 hours after a rock concert ends. Nobody wants to waste their money, and even worse, after 2 or 3 years, when people are looking to trade it in because warranty's gone, and they find out quickly that some of their vehicles have lost 50, 60, or 70% of their original value. It's absolutely earth-shattering. I'm going to share a list of 10 of the worst depreciating, biggest heaps that are virtually worthless as we roll into 2026 and look back on the last 3 years. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. 3-year depreciation is one of the biggest factors that most buyers consider, because after 3 years, most of the time, most cars, their warranty's gone. On top of it, if you take out a long loan term, by 3 or 4 years, you're still underwater. So it matters how badly these cars depreciate. And the first one on our list is the Mustang Mach-E. Now, these were very popular when they came out, but unfortunately, the used car market has not been kind to the Mustang Mach-E, primarily because the competition is one of the big factors. This goes head-to-head directly with the Tesla Model Y, which has been selling record numbers for the last few years. The Mustang Mach-E comes along and has some great detailing, great attributes like these great little Mustang knockoff taillights, of course the Mustang badges, and of course you can get different configurations. Rear-wheel drive, you can get all-wheel drive systems. This one's the 4-wheel E4, of course you can get a GT, and they're very good-looking vehicles overall. Unfortunately, as always, most EVs just suffer a brutal depreciation, and a lot of that, especially when you're considering people who are buying used EVs, are usually looking for a used Tesla. So unfortunately, that really hurt this particular brand, and sadly a lot of people just couldn't get over the fact that they were utilizing the Mustang brand name for an EV. It was literally one of those no-go zones, but they did it. There's also recall issues. The predicted reliability is not amazing, with issues with lockouts and of course poor battery issues. There was an issue of with some sunroofs in some early models, and some recalls have been afflicting the brand as a whole. Means there's a massive depreciation, which is damaging blow to the original owner. A huge win for a second owner, but in 3 years, from a 2022 model year till 2025, we're seeing the average depreciation look to be about 46.13% of that value gone up in smoke. Where the average new car price of these vehicles is about $52,945, the average used price in 2022 model years are all the way down to about $28,523. Now, a good friend of mine just went out and bought one of these brand new, and it's also telling because Ford's incentivizing these drastically. So as soon as they push down the values of new products, what do you think that does to the used inventory? Values drop even further. Yes, he was able to scour up a vast, almost $20,000 discount from MSRP on a brand new all-wheel drive select version of the Mustang Mach-E like this. And a lot of it is because they're simply not selling. Ford's not selling a lot of EVs. EVs in general are not selling, and a lot of them largely because of the incentives. The federal incentives going away for tax credits of $7,500 have been dissipating, and that was just enough to get people to buy. Now with those credits gone, people have just given up hope. One example of a car that absolutely falls off a cliff, we're seeing the Tesla Cybertruck. Now specifically, there's a case study where somebody went in, they were tired of it, a 2024 model year of the foundation, like we're here, the foundation style, traded it in with only 6,500 miles on it, and unfortunately lost a mass amounts of money. They only got 65% of their original value of that vehicle on the trade-in. A lot of the issues with some of these vehicles, and of course the poor depreciation rate, is the fact that a lot of people just simply didn't want them. They heard about the quality trim issues, of course with trim parts coming off, programming problems, and of course naturally there was a flood on the market. The flavor of the day became the vomit of the year, and nobody really wanted the Tesla Cybertruck. Many people tried to trade them in, they got a taste, they got a sample, and then many people realized they're very polarizing vehicles. Some loved it, some hated it, but ultimately there wasn't enough to get the sales up there. The rebates from the federal government of $7,500 yanked out of their hands, and next thing you know, people didn't have the extra incentive, the incentive they needed to buy some of these cars. And some of these premium luxury EVs just no longer seem to be quite as desirable, and therefore prices fell off a cliff. A lot of people tried to get out quick, fast, and in a hurry, and absolutely lost their shirt. Another one of the biggest losers for value loss in 3 years comes down to the brother of this, the EV brother of this, the Leaf. And the Leaf back in 2022, did you realize that there was a major recall for potential catastrophic fire when the users plugged into a level 3 charger? It could result in lithium deposits in the battery cells and ultimately lead to a fire. Of course, that ultimately led to a recall, software change, so it wouldn't overheat. It was a catastrophic failure waiting to happen. Unfortunately, the Leaf was also old technology. It just didn't have the staying power. With the advancement in battery technology, the improvement in ranges, and of course the improvement in style meant that the Nissan Leaf was just an ugly duckling waiting for some new owner. I've looked all over the classifieds and I find Nissan Leafs going for almost a song and a dance. The early generation Leafs, you couldn't give them away. The next generation, well, they're selling a little better, they're holding a bit of value, but with the poor range and reliability, very few people are looking in for any level of Leaf. Now, of course, in 2026, it all changes, there's a new redesign, but up until that point, the last three are losing their value at an alarming rate, to the point where by 2026 and the new release of the new version, nobody's gonna want those models. That's why the values are tanking as bad as they are with the Nissan Leaf. Back in 2022 when the Leaf came out, they retailed on average for about $32,400. Now you find them all over the classifieds for less than $17,000. I've seen some as little as $12,000 to $14,000 with decent miles on them. That means you're expected to lose at least 46 to 50% of its value in 3 short years. The worst part is with the poor range, the improvements that we've seen across the industry, nobody wants them, so you're holding on to a sinking ship. It's a literal anchor, and so they're going down in tragic value. Ultimately, they're virtually worthless in 3 years. Before we get to the next model, you've got to realize there's a common denominator here. The ones that are depreciating the hardest are premium vehicles. Of course, the other common denominator is most of them are EVs, and if you buy a car like a 7 Series BMW or an S-Class Benz, in a few years they're going to be worth almost nothing as well. Right here, we're talking about the Jaguar I-Pace, another EV, this time by Jaguar. Now, we also know that they rebranded themselves. Nobody's really too excited about the brand anymore, and more importantly, they pretty much went on hiatus and stopped production of any one of their vehicles. Nothing is available anymore unless you're buying an F-Pace on the lot, but there's nothing being produced. Now, here we have the I-Pace. It's a beautiful vehicle, and it actually drives extraordinarily well. You do get the closed-off front grille. That's pretty obvious. You've got an EV because you don't need a grille. There's the big kitty cat. You get the vent on the hood, big glossy wheels, fold-away mirrors, and again, these beautiful tuck-away handles. Look at the style of this absolutely gorgeous vehicle. Naturally, we got all kinds of other detailing here. It's a very nicely sculptured vehicle, and it's unfortunate that these vehicles suffered such a massive depreciation, largely because of the poor branding and also largely because it's an EV and because it's a luxury vehicle, as I've already said. Now, there's a flip side to this, where the new owners, the brand new owners of these vehicles take an absolute beating. The win is you can get yourself an amazing buy on a used car market. Let's face it, most of them are compatible with similar plug-ins, whether you plug it at home or you plug in a class 3 or stage 3 charger and you can get yourself a fast DC charging. A lot of these vehicles underneath are almost all the same. It's really what's outside that counts in these particular vehicles, and this Jaguar I-Pace is one such vehicle that is certainly worth a look on the used car market. But to buy it brand new, you know you are taking an absolute financial destructive hit. With that said, the average vehicle, a 2022 model year, after 3 short years has lost as much as almost 48% of its original value, or about $33,000. They started around 70 grand for these brand new, and they've gone down as low as about $36,800 on average on the used car market. And while people are money conscious these days, holding on to their dollars, worrying about where their money goes, these are another example, this whole list of cars that are absolutely astronomically brutal on depreciation, the kind of depreciation that's sinking your finances like the Titanic. The next one here is one that I say looks kind of like Buckus the Beaver. A lot of people like them, most people don't. The resale on these hasn't been particularly stellar. You get the big buck tooth right there, and definitely this led into the charge of the newer generation. Of course, you get the big headlights, funny weird style right there, and of course laser cut wheels, flip away. This is the M version, lots of glass on the roof, but this rear finishing is just a beast. Not a particularly good looking unit, but as you'll notice, the X3 now has been sort of restyled to simulate what you're seeing in this version. Here's the M6, is the hottest version. Of course, you get all of this fancy plastic big blue decal there. It means it's electric, odd handles, strange interiors, and from a BMW's perspective, a lot of loyalists want the internal combustion engine. There's always somebody willing to try something new, but these haven't been selling all that well, and even worse on the used car market. The average price of these brand new is about $84,000. After 3 short years being down as low as $43,757, you know, even with the reliability ranking around 79, it's much better than the Volkswagens and much better than some of its competitors. People are not looking for so much of these. They're really rather buy some of the other alternatives. There's some great EVs on the market if you're looking for electric vehicles, but this one has lost typically about 47.41% depreciation in 3 short years. So you've lost just about half of the value of this monstrosity. Reliability is marginal, but most importantly, it's just a really not a particularly telling exterior finish. Not a lot of people love that design, and I think that one's hurting it a little bit. Although that being said, there's no doubt about it, it looks true to the EV platforms. This one's not so yummy. Another one, a big loser right here. In 2022, Audi, of course, had a model, the e-tron GT, which is their high-performance, flat, of course, sedan that was essentially the same vehicle as a Porsche Taycan, but Audi carried the brand instead. And of course, it has high-performance capabilities. It has great handling with these big brakes, big handling wheels. Of course, you've got all kinds of great vents and styling. It actually has a wonderful profile that looks absolutely spectacular. But the problem is a lot of these vehicles were purchased initially with high incentives, big discounts. Because of the EVs, not a lot of people were buying them. Or if you wanted them, you typically got them under the incentives. The federal tax credits wouldn't necessarily apply here, but companies like Audi would often offer up many different buying incentives. Of course, great interest rates and reductions in pricing just to get a lot of these vehicles out the door. Sure, you get carbon fiber, you get the big calipers. It's a gorgeous vehicle. I mean, look at the big hips on here. Carbon fiber mirrors, big glass roof, deployable spoiler right there. Of course, big LED taillights, and this is the RS version. Lots of carbon fiber everywhere. It's a beautiful vehicle, the e-tron GT. Certainly one that has a presence all of its own. It stands out like there's no tomorrow. Has a gorgeous interior, and one that I've certainly often wondered about buying myself. Well, herein lies a couple of points that have to be made with a lot of these big discounts. Buying them new is a punishing exhibition of blowing your cash like there's no tomorrow, but buying them slightly used is a huge opportunity for a massive discount, because the average price new of these was about $122,400, but the used car market in 3 years, the average price is all the way down to about $63,000 and change. Means the depreciation value lost in 3 short years is as much as 48.1% depreciation. Now, Audi's had some problems with technical issues, of course, charging problems, battery related issues, electronic gremlins. I mean, even this one, the hood's open. Why? Because there's troubleshooting some problems with this vehicle. There have been many teething issues. Electronics has been the primary issue, of course, because they are electrical. Of course, charging, range issues, battery problems, generally just shutting down has been a problem worth noting. These ones here, of course, have the sporty look, but a lot of people just don't want to buy these, and that pushes prices down. Because if you are going for pure EV, a lot of times people are looking at better value getting a used Tesla Model S Plaid, which we already know isn't amazing in terms of holding its value, but they would go with brands that they're familiar with. There's also more practical solutions, and most people realize that it's fun for a test drive. That 0 to 60 is great, 2.5 seconds. That's great for the first 5 or 6 times, but once the honeymoon is over and once you get your jollies, most people realize that you paid a lot of money for something that you could do with much less cash out of your pocket. So the used car prices absolutely plummet with the Audi e-tron GT. Reliability problems, of course, the overall price initially meant that they just fell off a cliff, and they fell much higher. Any of the premium luxury EVs are taking a much bigger percentage hit than most other lower cost EVs. Another one of the biggest losers in a 3-year time frame. It's no shocker why they ended production after 2024. We're talking about the Maserati Levante. There's not many vehicles on this list that are internal combustion vehicles, but this happens to be one of them. With an initial sticker price of over $116,000 for the average vehicle, the average used price is down around 60 grand. In other words, they've lost as much as $56,000 in a short period of time. Yeah, there's a variety of different trim levels here. You get an SQ4, you get little hot models, but ultimately it comes down to the quality or perceived quality that you're getting with some of these Maseratis. Now, they're not all that bad, and many of them are a lot better than a lot of people give them credit for, but unfortunately, the reputation absolutely hurts and devastates the brand. Combining with the fact that Stellantis, we know Stellantis is overpriced and underqualified a lot of their vehicles, and that means these follow suit as well. So at an average of 48.17% depreciation in 3 short years, the way it's trending, by the time 2026 rolls around, these vehicles are virtually worthless. And a lot of it isn't because of the great trim or the beautiful detailing, LEDs on the back end. Of course, they have great finishing on the bottom. Sure, they give you the quad tips on the very bottom, where a lot of manufacturers are doing that these days. They also give you all kinds of nice detailing, nice little overhangs up top you don't get on a lot of these models. And it's a gorgeous looking vehicle, but it's not necessarily the quality that a lot of people are expecting from this particular price tag. You expect six-figure quality out of these vehicles, but the interior is more aligned with what you're getting from a Grand Cherokee or something even lower level like a Chrysler product in their minivans. The minivans have almost similar switchgear in some cases, and some of the fit and finish isn't necessarily there to impress. All they do is throw a little bit of carbon fiber to try to dazzle, but the rest of the parts, and if you really look past the peel back the layers of the onion, you'll find that the quality isn't necessarily what it should be for that price tag, and certainly the depreciation is largely in part due to the high cost of expensive repairs and maintenance. Service shops are few and far between as well, which makes it also especially hard to sell. It's a very niche model. And even with the great hips like that and the Pep Boys design stick-on finish right there and the particularly great detail on the front end, that's not enough to get people buying these on the used car market. Titanic rings a bell? Absolutely. The Maserati Levante, one of the few internal combustion vehicles on this list of brutal used car pricing and massive depreciation loss. The next vehicles are a couple of examples of some brutal value retention that likely will diminish into almost nothing by 2026. What we have here is a Mercedes-Benz EQE, EQS. The S is more upstream. This one here is EQE, which is more the mid-size, largely built on a similar platform. The S adds a little bit of different subframe materials, of course, a little better performance. You could tell them very much by looking at that front grille. Look, you got that smooth grille. Not a lot of people loving that, but it does have a unique look. And I will comment that the interior is absolutely plush. I test drove one of these and I reviewed one over on 6-Speed Car Reviews, and it's absolutely lovely to drive. But I found personally these handles almost chopped my finger off at one point. Of course, these ones here, we have this beautiful, I guess you could call it Hofmeier's kink or thereabouts. You have this beautiful LED finishing right here, all-wheel drive in certain models. Here's an EQE 500, which essentially I drove the EQE 350, but they're all great. They just have different levels of performance and some of the nicest infotainment systems around. The problem is they're premium model with high levels of high cost initially to purchase in, and a lot of people were buying these initially, those that were well-heeled, that had the money. Used car buyers aren't interested. Many enthusiasts don't want EVs, and many enthusiasts don't want EVs that cost a lot of money. So these expensive premium EVs hit the tank, hit rock bottom very, very quickly. With the EQE like this topping around 50% and the EQS version being around 50.81% gone in 3 years, they started around $125,000 and plummeted to $61,000 and change. And it's not because they're not fun to drive. They're lovely. They're some of the nicest interiors. They fit and finish is very nicely put together. They drive absolutely sumptuously, but they're an expensive vehicle new. And of course, as we always see, a lot of those rebates are going away, so less people are buying them new now, and even less are going to buy them on the used car market, thus pushing down the prices of used when the incentives start ramping up on the brand new vehicles. So what are we expecting? Yes, we're expecting a great purchase on the used car market. If you want to get into one of these vehicles, if you can afford it, it's absolutely a massive amount of vehicle for the money. But of course, as always, if you bought one of these vehicles brand new, then you're experiencing nothing more than absolute catastrophic depreciation to the tune of 50% plus in 3 years. In 5 years, this thing's worth 20 to 30% of its original value. That means you're going broke. You basically throw all your money in a bin, give it a good light, because that's what you're getting. By the year 2026, these vehicles are almost worthless. Another one of the biggest losers in the first 3 years, from 22 now to 2025 and beyond to 2026, with an initial buy-in price, of course, at $45,320. The average used retail value of these vehicles are only about 22 grand. You could expect to lose about $23,000 in the first 3 years of this vehicle, to the tune of about 51.33%, and that just continues to decline. And we're dealing with a Volkswagen ID.4. Yes, in other words, Volkswagen hasn't been known and renowned for reliability, and they're actually one of the literal worst in the bottom of the barrel for durability for the last few years, and a lot of the manufacturers are beating this. There was also a lot of great options out there in this segment. Of course, Volkswagen's had to incentivize a lot of their products. You get the nice little flush handles, beautiful all-wheel drive Pro S, but they're all giving you that. Every manufacturer is creating an all-wheel drive platform, electric vehicle. So what's special here? Especially on the used car market, people go with vehicles like the Tesla, because why? Well, they have the best network, the charging warning system, and of course they're known already. They've been around for a while. They've sort of proven themselves. You know what you get. Volkswagen and the reliability issues have been a problem for many, many years. You can expect electrical problems with many of these vehicles. There has been a problem with some of the locking systems, the drive systems, and even the sunroof systems on top have been a problem with a lot of these Volkswagen. So it doesn't matter whether you're buying an EV or whether you're buying an internal combustion Volkswagen, it seems to be afflicted with a lot of problems. Therefore, most of them always fall off a cliff in depreciation. The next big 3-year time frame depreciation loser goes to this little Chevy Trailblazer. Unfortunately, you're going to be blazing some trails to the next homeless encampment if you buy one of these vehicles because of the heavy depreciation. You're going to lose the vast majority of your money in a 3-year time frame. That's right, 51.99% is gone, up in smoke. That equates to about $12,000, almost $800 from a new car price of about $25,000. You're only going to see it listed at around $11,000 on the used car market, meaning that regardless of the fact that it's got cute little fake tailpipes, but it's got Fisher-Price looking taillights, of course, very cute little wheels, but very plasticky throughout. It's a very chintzy, basic, subcompact little SUV crossover. Yes, you get some great little headlights there, and this great little black chrome, which we know I've seen these on Hyundais and Kias, and they peel away after a couple of short years. Now, some people say that the initial quality is holding up fairly well, but let's be honest, this is more or less a Chevy Trax on roids, and you might as well just get the cheaper Chevy Trax and skip this altogether. It's not necessarily the best product. It's cheap, it's effective, it's price point, but you're going to lose your shirt. And overall, most say that it's relatively reliable. I say give it 5 or 6 or 7 years when it's worthless, because in 2026 you'll probably be able to buy these for almost nothing. They will be worthless because of the rate of depreciation. These vehicles you will have for literally a song and a dance. You can do a little tap dance, maybe a handshake, and you can walk away with one of these in 2026. Comfortable, practical, but certainly buying used is much better than buying these brand new because you will lose your shirt. And here we have one of the biggest losers. This is the premium vehicle by Tesla. This is their Model S, which unfortunately their self-driving mode is self-driving it right off a cliff in terms of value, where they start around $120,000. Now, huge depreciation has absolutely shed the value of these vehicles, not because they're not fun, not because they're not fast. And the Tesla Model S Plaid like this has over 1,000 horsepower and does 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds. But for day-to-day use, most people recognize that you're paying a lot of money for that level of performance, and they just realize as well, nobody wants to buy it. Secondhand, third-hand, nobody's buying these vehicles, therefore price tags just drop. And 67% or 2/3 of its value initially gone means that these vehicles are some of the hardest depreciating vehicles on the planet. If you want to get a premium upscale luxury vehicle like the Tesla Model S, you're going to pay the price. You've got to pay to play, and these unfortunately are losing a mass amount of value. So as we roll into 2026, and take note, the last 3 years meant that you were going to eat a lot of your initial investment, and if you were going in with huge loan payments, chances are you're going to be negative equity, underwater, and you're going to lose money at an alarming rate. And with all of that said, right there's a list of some of the best models for 2026, brand new. Many of them you've never even heard of. Don't waste your money on anything unless you've seen these first. Hope to see each and every one in the next one, everybody. See you then. Bye-bye.